Whenever I give a big talk, I normally put a coin in my pocket to remind me. This specifically coin reminds me, hey, you're here to do service, you're here to help others. And one time I was asked to give a talk for the Pivot Program, which is a program down in DC run by Georgetown University for formerly incarcerated prisoners. It's a great group of people that through entrepreneurship, we can help these individuals. That morning, I was rushing downtown, to the Venture Lab, and I totally forgot the coin. And as I started speaking to the group, I let them know, say, hey, I forgot my coin. I normally have it in my pocket to remind myself that I'm here to serve. So please forgive me. I'll do the best I can during this little lecture for an hour. At the end of the lecture, one of the formerly incarcerated prisoners came up to me with his hand clenched, reached up to me and said, Mark, 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 Mark. And I didn't know what he was going to give me. I thought he was going to give me a contraband or something. And he reaches over and it was a quarter. He goes, Mark, so you're never without a coin again, right? Here's a quarter that you can always keep in your pocket. And I do. So my immediate emotion that came out of that was shame, that I can't believe that I had this emotion, but he gave me such a gift, right? That never have bad intentions or bad assumptions of anyone until you really get to know them. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try to hopefully give you some words of wisdom, but don't yell at me if it doesn't inspire you or get you going. I'm just here to help. I'm excited to be here. So let me tell you about our social impact journey and how it began. A colleague of mine from Georgetown University last summer, another professor said, hey, Mark, it's the pandemic. Why don't we teach high school students how to launch a for-profit social venture? I said, sure, great, let's do it. It sounds like a lot of fun. We thought we'd get 20 students. Next thing we know, we got 70 students from California to Florida, all signed up virtually to take this social entrepreneurship with me and my co-founder, John Jabara. It was a great experience, but to be honest, we just kind of let it go. And in January, I got a phone call from someone who runs a entrepreneurship education foundation. She said, Mark, I've supported your endeavors in the past. I think you're an educator, can help these kids, but what about the kids that I support, the low income and disadvantaged students? And it was like an awakening. It was just kind of this amazing call that I needed to do better. So we looked into the problem. 69% of low income and disadvantaged students don't go to college. 38% of the wage gap between their colleagues that go to college and those that don't. If you don't go to college, you're 4 times more likely to be unemployed. So the numbers are disheartening and staggering. I knew we had to do something. I knew it was a calling that I had to do it. So as we work with our organization, there's 2 ways to embed purpose. One is through leadership. The great way is, Steve Jobs was recruiting John Scully from Pepsi and said, John, do you want to sell sugared water or do you want to change the world? That's one method of changing purpose, right? Embedding purpose is through leadership. I think the more effective way, though, is the second way. And I think it's best described through this parable, this wonderful parable of 3 bricklayers. So excuse me if you've heard this before. I'm sure many of us have. A stranger walks up to 3 bricklayers, and the first bricklayer is working, not working too hard. And he goes up to the stranger and says, why are you here? Bricklayer responds, I'm here for a job. So he goes, okay. So the stranger asks the second bricklayer, says, why are you here? He's working a little harder, not too hard. Because, well, I really like bricklaying and I'm here for a career. He goes to the third bricklayer and he's working so hard, putting all the bricks in, really doing the best he can. And he's just so impressed. The stranger is so impressed with the work ethic of this third bricklayer. And he says, what are you doing? And the bricklayer responds, I'm building a cathedral for God, right? And he was building this amazing cathedral. And all 3 bricklayers were doing the same thing, but one of them had a major purpose for what they were doing. And this, to me, is the more effective route of purpose and embedding into your organization. It comes from the employee, and it comes from your coworker, where they feel so empowered that they're really doing something great. So that's the first thing we're going to discuss. So how do you do this? How do you get this framework in an organization where your employees love what they're doing and they feel they have a real purpose? There's 3 main things we're going to discuss. One is clarity of purpose. The second is empowerment. And the third is you reward purpose. And we all struggle with this with entrepreneurs. So don't think that, Marc Steren has this figure this out, because I don't. Myself and my co-founder, we always struggle with this, and we're constantly working on this. In fact, we're meeting right after this at 1 o'clock to go over this very question as we work together on this. So clarity. So what does clarity of purpose mean? So it means this can of Pepsi, I know exactly what it stands for, what's inside. There's no ambiguity what's inside this can. There's Pepsi, right? That's beautiful purpose. So I was coaching a startup. She was an amazing entrepreneur. And what she does is she has a mobile application that teaches Americans how to learn Spanish. And she does it in a very unique manner. She employs Guatemalan mothers who otherwise can't find employment to teach Americans how to speak Spanish, their native language. It's really ingenious, really just amazing what she's doing. And she's getting these women out of poverty. I just love her mission. I love what she's doing. But there was another employee who said, you know what? Why don't we do this same model for Latino women in New York and California and Miami? Let's expand it. And, so she met with me. She says, I'm really struggling. I said, what's your mission? What's your purpose? She says, we're here to help Guatemalan mothers get out of poverty. And Spanish and teaching Spanish to Americans is how we do it. I said, then that's great that she wants to help Latina women in Miami and New York, but that's not your mission. You have to stay focused in on your purpose. So clarity of purpose is so key to what you do and what we do. The second is empowerment. So what does an empowered employee really do as a founder and as one of the bosses here, that at our university startups? How do we empower our employees? And we do it through questions. We really try to ask them questions. And give an example, there was a great article in Forbes magazine of a company that had 100% retention. And the managers, when they critique and do reviews of their employees, they could not critique them. They had to go in their office and merely ask questions. They could never give answers, and they have 100% retention, which is just absolutely amazing. I'm a startup and only have 17 employees, and we don't have 100% retention. It's just awesome what they did. So we try to always ask questions, and what you'll see is it's kind of reverted back to us. I have an amazing program manager, and she put on our office wall, what kind of impact are you going to have today, right? And so I see that, I walk in inspired, I see other students and other people write what kind of impact they're having. So she's asking questions, and questions are a great way to really motivate and inspire everyone that's involved. So that's really important. Another great way I see it's done by empowering employees is through someone who used to be in my incubator, Georgetown University. He's an amazing entrepreneur. And he came up with this idea of cold coffee in his dorm room. And, from that cold coffee in his dorm room, he now has a $500 million company with investors from Aaron Rodgers to Jennifer Lopez. And what he does is they have an acronym called COACH, right? It's curious, optimistic, ambitious, compassionate, humility. I don't know if I missed any letters there, so Jordan, don't kill me. And the COACH is the acronym, and all their conversations you'll hear multiple times. Hey, coach, hey, coach, hey, coach. And they live it. And when you speak to Jordan, even though he's just achieved so much and so quickly in such a short amount of time, he is the most humble person I'll ever meet. And that's part of their values. So I love that acronym. I love the employee, that notion of here we have to live it. So I think that's so clever. And I will say with that talent attraction, that living it, it's helped us attract talent. So our CFO, she came to me and said, hey, Mark, I'm a professor at Cornell, but I'm also a CPA, have started 2 startups. I'd love to be your CFO. And now she's our CFO. We just recruited an amazing chief revenue officer who used to run $180 million in sales, and he's coming to our tiny little startup. These values that you live as you empower your employees is key. The third element of employee really just living that purpose is reward. So we saw, my co-founder and I, we saw this cute little reward system where they gave their employees $200 and said, hey, go out, once you achieve something, go out and use that $200 and buy some shoes and post your shoes. And John said to me, he said, you know what, that's good, I like that idea, but that's not living our values. Why don't we give them a bonus for achieving their project, but then they have to purchase something or give something away that lives our values. And the responses I got from the employees that received the bonus were amazing. Thank you for letting us live our values. Thank you for letting us shop our values. Another employee wrote me, I love working for this company. So that reward system has to be tied in to this amazing employee experience. That's really key. So you have your purpose, you have your employee experience, and of course the customer, right? How do you embed your purpose with the customer? The obvious answer is you measure it, right? You measure things, not just the returns, the financial returns, which for any organization is clearly important. But what you need to measure and what we have to measure is those returns of your values. So we measure how optimistic are you about life now after they go through our course? Are you more likely to be prepared for high school? Are you now likely to go on to college? And we see a jump in these metrics that may not be initially financially tied, but we see that jump, and it's so exciting to see because we see our values, our purpose translated to the customer experience. And I'll just leave you with one other note. It's the ecosystem. How do you tie all these things together? It's the ecosystem of what we do, and I'll give you two ways of developing a great ecosystem. It's clearly who you hire and who you partner with. We did a pitch for a potential investor. The investor called me back that night and, they said, hey, we're not going to invest. So I called my co-founder, John. I said, hey, I spoke to the lead investor. They said they're not going to invest. And my co-founder said something that really stuck with me and probably stick with me my entire life. He said, they're missing one thing. I said, John, what are they missing? He goes, they're missing the power of Marc Steren. And it was just like, oh my God, it just overwhelmed me that he felt that good about our relationship and how are things working and the power of us together. That was amazing. And the second, obviously, is ecosystem supporters who are outside your organization, right? Who do you want to spend time with to uplift you when there are times that are not going to be great? And I'll tell you, my wife is great, and my in-laws and my parents are fantastic. But my sister, one time, I actually was talking to her at the same time, a couple minutes later, she says, I want you to write, I believe down and put it on your desk. I actually put it on my board behind me, and it says, I believe, and I look at it every single day. It's really inspiring to me. And what's been very cool, I actually have now an investor that's going to put 2 times the amount that the other investor was going to come in. So everything works out fine. Don't stress it. Things may not work out initially, but trust me, it works out great. So those are the 3 elements I want to do. I wanted to keep it brief. I know everyone's been listening this whole great week of DC Startup Week, and I wanted to open up with any questions, but that's how we embed our purpose. It's inspired from the employee. We try to add clarity. We try to add empowerment. We try to reward it. We try to combine it with the customer experience. And then finally is that ecosystem we build in together. So thanks for the time. I know you have many choices to do on your Friday morning, so it's always great being with you guys.
Mark, I thank you for that. I do appreciate your focus on people, because I think it is very important as entrepreneurs to always surround yourself, with the right people that can help you, one, hold you accountable to what you want to accomplish, but can help you um, go through and navigate through the different challenges, because entrepreneurship is not a very easy journey to go through. And so I do appreciate that you're very focused on that. I want to ask you, how is it like when you're recruiting the talent? Like, how do you make sure that you're, bringing on people that align with your mission? Like, what kinds of questions do you ask them to see if this is a good fit?
Yeah, that's awesome. So we obviously look through where they've been, what kind of journey they've had, what, people live their value. They can say something in their interviews, but if you look at their past existence and what they've done, then they're not really living it. So we look at people that want to help. We have an amazing college essay writer. She is from New York, and she deals with students who are just top-notch students, people that go to Harvard, Yale, and I mean, she's incredible what she's done. But she's had experience working with those, less fortunate than us. I hear all the time where she struggles and it pains her when students don't get into the school that they really wanted. She cares about these kids. And so that's a value that I can look at her 20-year history of being a college essay writing coach And I know she fits our morals. She hits our purpose. She works with us. That gets us excited and inspires the rest of the team. So we're always looking for what you have done. In terms of questions, what we ask, we tell them what we stand for. We tell them what our mission is. And quite candidly, I've had people that say, you can't have an organization that has social impact, and still get the returns that I want, as an investor, as an employee for my stock options. And I tell them there's not a conflict, right? The population now has moved in such a great direction where you can do good and you can be profitable. You can do good and do amazing things with your organization. So that's, this next generation of entrepreneurs, of consumers, they're very discerning. They have many choices and they want to match their dollars with values, with their values. And that's what we try to do.
That's a really great point. I want to encourage the audience, let's this is our last session for the social impact track. Marc has so much knowledge and experience. He teaches this, he lives by it. And I want to encourage all of you, if you have questions that are specific to your ventures, like this is your opportunity. If you want to raise your hand, we're happy to unmute you, but let's have this set up so it's more of a conversation than anything. Marc, I have a question for you regarding you mentioned like making profit and all of that. Social enterprises need to make money at the end of the day. There are so many, great causes out there. And obviously, if you want to, be sustainable, make sure your employees are happy, you want to make sure that you're bringing in some kind of revenue. So can you tell us from your experience, like, how do you balance the two? I know it's like a very thin line, but what's your advice for companies that are just like extremely passionate about the cause that they don't really think about the generating revenue side of things?
Yeah, it's a great question. So all startups go through three basic phases. They go through a problem solution fit. They identify a specific type of problem and they see if their solution can solve it in a manner that's unique and better than other existing alternatives. The second you hear, often in entrepreneurship is product market fit, where you can take that same solution and hit it in, really 10x that solution, where the channels, the distribution channels now grow 10x to where you are. And the third is scale. And that's the real difference between a nonprofit and, let's say, for us, a for-profit. We're building a solution using machine learning, natural language processing, web crawlers, where we can scale it worldwide. Nonprofits are very high touch and such great missions, but we believe in order to have the impact we need to have to really affect and give these students an opportunity to be amazing, that's all they need, is just opportunities in this methodology. We need to scale. So that's the big difference. For-profit will look to scale. Nonprofits are great, high touch, depending upon foundations and the goodwill of others. We are a business, and so we're going for that scale.
Totally makes sense. So we have great questions actually coming in through, and please keep them coming. So Anna has a question. What are some ways to really imbue your staff, volunteers with the company values and beliefs?
So so volunteers is tough. And, this world with a part-time, remote, we struggle with that as well, Anna. So don't feel like you're alone in that struggle, but it's living that values. It's getting their input. It's making sure that they understand, what experience should be. We have an amazing, her name is Brooke Smith. She's a professor at University of Maryland who runs our employee experience. So every person, whether they're a summer intern or they're the latest chief revenue officer, they go through that employee experience, understand what we're about. And then we also take our values are tied to, really having our employees succeed. So we go through their personal and business goals. What do you want to achieve, not just within the business, but, your values? How can we support you? So your volunteers are gold, right? That you're dependent upon them. They have to live your values, but they have to see it being lived. So if your mission is to help others, help them succeed, right? And then they can help the beneficiaries succeed as well, right? We're in this together. We want everyone to succeed within your organization. They will be in a better position to serve others if they see that you care for their success, even though they are just merely volunteers, which is just awesome that they do it.
That's really great, Mark. I used to work at WeWork, and whenever they used to set up any KPIs, they would, the teams would break down, and we would have to say like what are they want to know, like what are our personal goals, right? Like in my role, like what do I want to accomplish? And then at the end of the day, they would kind of align it to the bigger picture. So I think it is important for organizations to understand like what drives employees, like what do they want to accomplish, and then how do you use that to help you as the founder or the leader, align it with what you want to accomplish in your organization. But I think that's a really, really great point, Mark. Sergey has a question here. How can a refugee, an immigrant, reach top tier impact VCs?
So that's, like any other entrepreneur, investors, I just had a great conversation with someone who's really trying to look to empower the community in the DMV, and he had a really great phrase. He called it, venture capital inclusion, venture capital, expansion. So we tend to look at things as finite pies, right? Last year, I think there was about $240 million of venture capital in the DMV. Instead of saying that's a finite pie that we all have to compete for, how can we look to expand that pie to 500 million to help many individuals who normally be excluded from venture capital? So that's number one. Number two, it's contingent upon people like us, quite candidly, in entrepreneurship education, founders, people who receive VC in the past, venture capitalists, to really go and look beyond our purview, right? This is who I normally hire. How can I help others that don't necessarily have this opportunity? So answer your specific question, you should be attending venture capital events, MAVA events. You should be Connectpreneur is a great resource in this area with Tian Wong, who's just fabulous, who really wants to connect others with angel investors. And if you show, we like people who we see more often. So be out there, call people, email people, have a cup of coffee. Even if you're not ready to be investable yet by a VC, put yourself on that radar, talk to them, get their feedback. What works and doesn't work, what makes you investable, how do you build out a team? Really, really work with VCs so when you are ready, they know you, right? Don't just shock them and say, hey, I have this idea. How do I do it? Top tier VCs, awesome question. So there is a process. So in DC, there's some amazing VCs, Revolution, NEA is out of Baltimore. Obviously the best, I wouldn't say the best, but the most notorious are out in Silicon Valley, like Kleiner Perkins. How do you get in front of them? Again, it's the networking, it's the connection to meet with them. So Mava is a great way to meet with top tier investors. I would call partners at different firms. If you want to go to Revolution, give Todd Klein a call and say, hey, I have this idea. Do you have time for a cup of coffee? The networking is the same, just now the stakes are a little higher for top tier VCs, but man, be out there. If you don't know them directly, it's better to get an introduction. So go to LinkedIn, try to find who knows that partner. And then if you know them, have, one away from Kevin Bacon, they say, get to that person to make that introduction to a top tier VC. That's probably the best method. Hopefully, Sergio, I answered that question for you.
That's really great. You're right. You have to, it is a competitive space, obviously, and you definitely have to put yourself out there. And great advice on building relationships with investors like earlier on, not just when you're ready to raise, but start having those conversations and build that trust as well. Fabiana has a question here. Were there other experiences or experiments you went through in the company building management process that didn't work, which led you to these three components of mission, empowerment, and reward?
So not so much in this organization, but in others. I used to, own organizations in the past where, especially the first one, where I tried to do a lot of micromanaging, and that didn't work. It just didn't work. It stifled my employees' creativity. I wasn't a good boss, and it didn't work. So I think this is just from experience of learning with others. And hey, you said something interesting before, you want your volunteers to live your purpose, which is awesome. But even more powerful is that as an organization, we're all living this aligned purpose with a volunteer or employee doesn't feel like it's my purpose, but it's our purpose. So that is really the key of building a great organization where they're proud to walk around with your t-shirt, where they put on LinkedIn that, hey, we're part of university startups, or they're meeting others. That is really the key of empowerment, clarity, and reward. And Fabiana, I'll tell you that we struggle with this again every day. And I just brought in a great new CRO, and he's making us think through these issues. What is our purpose? What is our clarity and mission? What is our product? And we're constantly working on this.
And Mark, I have a question about, you mentioned building partnerships and ecosystems, right? Tell us more about that. As social entrepreneurs, there are so many, organizations out there that can help lift you up and make a bigger impact. Can you tell us more about what it really takes to build those relationships, what you should be thinking about when partnering with various organizations and building that ecosystem?
Yeah, so we partner with over 12 nonprofits, 3 foundations, school districts, and what we find is that authenticity is real. I guess that's saying the same thing, but if you're authentic and you really want to help them and serve them, they're more likely to engage you, right? It's yes, we're here to make money and we're here to be profitable, but in the end, we're here to serve them, and I think that really comes through on everyone in our organization. Every person in my organization and our organization could be doing something else. And quite candidly, at this stage of their startup and their lives, they probably could make more money doing something else. So it is that notion that we're here to serve them and what's really their value proposition by serving them. So when we go into schools, how are we really helping college counselors? If we can't solve that pain point, they won't use us. If I can't serve the nonprofit kids to better, to make them better comparatively to what they were before they went through our program, then it's not a win-win for either of us. So when I call nonprofits and I tell them that they're going to have a class taught by a Cornell professor or a Johns Hopkins professor who's at the UN this week teaching them about innovation, or another professor whose book was just endorsed by Adam Grant Wharton and Ariana Huffington and Seth Godin and Daniel Pink. These professors are teaching your kids. They're overwhelmed with excitement, and quite candidly, our professors and our teams could be doing other things, and they want to help these kids. So it really fits. So when you approach these organizations, your best interest is tied to their best interests, and that's such a great fit.
Totally makes sense. On Sergey's point, I do want to ask a question on when you are fundraising, how important is it to be visible to these investors, like on pitch deck, pitch book or Crunchbase, Angel List? How important is it that you are visible and foundable to these investors?
So at this, it is important. I mean, it's certainly important to be on those networks, but nothing beats, being in front of that person you want them to invest in. Nothing beats the mimicry of seeing your reactions, of seeing, what it's like, of building that relationship face to face. So, I agree. It's important to be on those networks. Those are awesome networks. I mean, those are great. But for us, I love to meet with them in person as much as I can to really just talk it through. I am not, as you can see, I'm not a PowerPoint kind of guy. I never do PowerPoints. I mean, I do every once in a while for class, but for this, I just love talking to people and I love their reactions and feedbacks, even investors, even customers that don't, bring us on. I love their feedback. I love to learn why, things work or don't work. And that's really the key. And that's, everything's a relationship. And that's why it's so important, that great question earlier, for refugees or anyone else, you really need to be out there talking to people and getting their feedback and make your company an investable one if that's what you want to do, if you want to get investments.
100%. And Mark, a quick question about your business model. So you're obviously doing a lot of impact, you're targeting these teenagers, um, but who's paying for it? Is it the teenagers? Is it the organizations that are sponsoring? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so we work nonprofits and school districts, and what we do, these programs are supported by foundations, they're supported by corporate sponsors, they're supported by banks, eventually by school districts. We try to make the nonprofits and schools the experts in identifying these kids and the money sources from someone else. We want to make as little friction as we can for the nonprofits because they're struggling. They're constantly looking for donations, they're constantly looking for ways to financially help these kids. So we don't want to put too much of a burden on these nonprofits. So we work with foundations, again, corporate sponsors to really fund these kids. With school districts, there's a lot of federal and state money that can help these kids in these kind of programs. So we embed our curriculum into the school districts. So in lieu of taking AP history or also taking AP history, you take social entrepreneurship. And what we do that I think is so empowering, it's not just a class. It is your mindset is being changed. You now can think differently. You now have the skills to be creative, to be collaborative, to work in a team, less risk averse. So you may not become an entrepreneur, but you can take your skills to General Electric or PricewaterhouseCoopers or the local barber shop, wherever you want. These skills are so transferable, and we just open up their minds. It's like a light bulb coming on. It's just so exciting to see these kids who never have this type of experience. So it's not just a Shark Tank. It's not just a class. It's empowerment of the mind. And it's just something that takes with them, and when we track it, that will stay with them, for a very, very long time.
Um, Question on that. Any success stories, any successful students that, or is it still early on, and they're still building their startups, but and any wins like
Yeah,
for people?
first of all, it's a win, just seeing these kids build things. But I'll give one great group of girls. They were, 15-year-old girls from Ward 7. They're very anxious. The neighborhoods aren't the best. So they developed a teddy bear to hold on when they're anxious. But the clever innovation is they put a QR code on the bottom of their teddy bear. That way they flash their mobile device and it takes them directly to a psychologist whenever they want. Right? It's this amazing creativity from 15-year-olds to think differently. And what's so exciting for us is they're thinking about solutions for problems in their own neighborhoods, right? I just don't have the power to go in there and solve something that I don't experience. We give them the tools to solve problems for them. We had another great team of female entrepreneurs. They're awesome. They invented an EpiPen that goes on the back of your mobile device, and they actually filed a patent on it, right? Because they struggle with that. So we want to take their own problems and help them and provide them the tools and skills to develop their own solutions. So, but for us, again, it's not about the concepts. It's not about delivering a win, in the Shark Tank. It's changing that mindset that they're empowered and they're in control of their own future. If they want to go to college, we'll give them the tools. If they want to become a mechanic, we'll give them the skills to become the best possible mechanic, where eventually they can own a line of garages. We really want to empower these kids, and we're excited. To be honest, we're privileged to do so.
That's amazing. So we have 5 minutes or so. Highly encourage you all, if you have last minute questions for Mark here, to drop them in the chat box or raise your hand, and we'll go ahead and unmute you. But what I'm hearing, what I love about this, Mark, is that these solutions are very localized, and these are individuals that are struggling, by these problems, and there's definitely a founder product fit there. Curious from your experience, like how important is it to help them realize the problem, right, and help these founders really show how big this problem is? Any thoughts on that? Because sometimes I feel we're all like very focused in our own experiences, but we don't know how to kind of step back and really look at this problem for what it really is.
Yeah, so obviously you need to do a TAM analysis, you need to do a competitive analysis. The biggest thing is you'll do customer interviews, and you'll listen how, how much of a searing problem is this? And you'll find common behaviors or common characteristics that say, wow, this is a problem that needs to be solved. And you solve it first locally, small, right? You nail it, then scale it, and then you start scaling it out and you look at the opportunities to build out this awesome solution for others. But you do need to do that work.
Awesome. So, oh, we have Bharat. Let me unmute you and you can ask your question. Bharat, and I
Hi,
apologize. I
Mark.
totally butchered your name. I
Hi.
apologize.
Hi, Mark. I'm asking you a question. I'm building a venture studio for supporting startups who are building solutions for the neurodiverse community, helping them lead a better quality of life. So, can you look at, how can you expand what you are doing to the neurodiverse community? This is a community which is at the bottom of the pyramid. How can we help them? And how can we encourage more youngsters to build startups which can help this community?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk to you online, but just in terms of a general phrase, our goal is to change their mindset. So whether they build that startup, which obviously I love, this is our sixth startup that we're working on now, or are they so valuable, to the community, to their employers that they can think differently. They can be, look at a problem and say, wow, this is an opportunity for us. And that's what we want to change. So again, I'll be happy to talk to you offline. We love to figure something out. But our goals and our mission and our purpose is to change and embed the entrepreneurship mindset into everyone, future doctors, future lawyers, future dentists, future mechanics, every teachers, everyone needs this mindset to be amazing. And they just need to be shown, it's there. It's, our team is we're not terribly special except for my professors and my employees. They're amazing. But the two founders, me and John, we just empower our team and they're bringing this magic to really these students. And so we are open to bringing it to everyone. That's why we're building the scale. So
Thank
we'll
you.
connect. Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for asking.
I send you a LinkedIn. Thank you.
Awesome.
Perfect. And thank you for that question. So what I'm hearing, Mark, is just it all boils down to just being, to really invest in yourself as a leader, like how founders could be better leaders, how they could manage people better. Any recommendations on resources that helped you? Any books, podcasts that you listen to?
Yeah, so it's great that you asked that. Thank you for asking. Actually, a board member sent me a quote from meditation. I love Stoicism. He's really big on Ryan Holiday, and I forgot the name of the book, but he's wonderful. Stoicism is amazing. I listen to a ton of podcasts. I read about 100 to 120 books every year, but my trick is I actually listen to most of those books. So I love listening to books, and I'll be happy to share a book list with you after, and then hopefully people can share books lists with me to inspire me as well. But knowledge is amazing, and there's so much to learn from each other and from these great words of wisdom in books. It's really invigorating. It's just inspiring to read, this great resources, and it's readily available.